Okay, in this video we're going to talk about how to restore photos. We're going to use a couple different brushes. One is understanding the clone tool and the spot healing brush. So like any other tutorials I've talked about, what we're going to do is first of all we're going to duplicate the layer. I'm just simply going to drag and drop over the duplicate or create a new layer icon, and now it created a new layer for me. So you've seen Photoshop's an awesome tool for making flyers, for text, but now let's get into what's really fun, which is photo restoration. Now there's a couple things that you can do. You'll notice if you hover over it, the clone stamp tool, that you have a brush size, and the brush size is right here. You can make it bigger or smaller, and notice that when I make it smaller, the brush is smaller. When I make it larger, the brush is larger. You can also do that with the command tool, or using the keyboard by the close bracket and open bracket to quickly go from a brush size bigger and smaller. And I'll tell you why that's important when we get into the details. But first of all, let's go over a few other things. So we have the size, and then we have the hardness. Now hardness indicates how rigid and hard this line will be, and the softness will be how soft it blends. These are different pen types and brush types that you can use as you're going, and different textures as well. But since this is the beginnings of Photoshop, we're going to stick mainly with just the brush, and we're going to mess with the hardness a little bit. So I'm going to move the hardness down to 20%, and the brush size is pretty good. The first thing that I want to do is I want to clean this area up right here. So now that I've collected and chosen the sides that I want, and I have it at 72 and the hardness is 20, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clone another part of this picture that isn't damaged, and it'll replace this image here. Now you could simply use a paintbrush. So let's say I've chose this color, and let's take the eyedropper tool, and from here we choose a color. I'm going to show you the difference of why the clone stamp tool is great. But for now, I've got the brush tool, and I'm going to make my brush size a little bigger, and I'm going to brush over it. Now, do you see what's happening? It might be hard to see, but it's actually just coloring it. It's not actually, this is a little easier, it's not actually taking an area and cloning it and making it look better. So this doesn't look good as a restoration, so I'm going to go ahead and dump this layer. I'm going to create it again, and now instead of using the brush tool, I'm going to use the stamp tool, or the clone tool. Now in order to select an area of what I want to copy, I'm going to make the brush size a little smaller, and I'm going to do it about right here. Actually, it looks like there's a little bit of a shadow, but I'm not going to worry about that. This is a pretty clear area, so I'm going to put my cursor right here with the clone tool, and then I'm going to hold down Alt or Option. On the Mac, it's an Option. On the PC, it's an Alt, or it'll be something like that. But you'll see as you click the button, it changes from the brush to crosshairs. This crosshairs is going to, and I'm just pressing it up and down on the keypad. So the crosshairs is going to let me select the area. So with the Option button held down, I'm going to click with my mouse, and now I've just copied that area. So you can see if I move my mouse over, it puts that in there. So it has that area cloned, and when I move it, this area, so I'm copying right here, so when I move, it's going to copy from this area. So if I go up, then it's going to go up into here. I'll show you what I mean. So say for example, I click here and I start to clone, and it's looking good, pretty good, but then all of a sudden you're going to see some weirdness. See how it's duplicating and making the cracks go up higher instead of getting rid of it? That is because when you move the tool, you'll see the crosshairs of where it's copying or where it's cloning, so that's not going to work. So I'll go into my history, and I'm going to go back to the duplicate layer, and I'll make sure that I'm on my clone tool again, and I'm going to go hold down the Option. I'm going to collect this area, and now I'm just going to click one time. And then I'm going to move and click here and click another time, and then here and click another time. Now you can drag and it will paint just like a paintbrush, so I'll do that. So this looks pretty good here, so I'm going to click, and now I'm going to drag. And now that looks a lot better, but there's a lot of white right here. It looks like it was scanned in. So I'm going to use the option, hold it down again, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to copy. And I see where it's going, and it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to go down. Now you'll notice it looks a little lighter, so that's not going to work. So I'm just going to do an undo, which you can go to Edit and Undo, or you can do Command Z and that will undo. So now this is where the brush size gets really important. So I'm going to make the brush size a little smaller. I'm going to hold down the option and copy, and now I'm just going to take bits and pieces to copy this. It can get a little bit tedious, but the better and more time you take on it, the better it's going to look. And the closer that you clone, then the closer it's going to match to the damaged areas of the photo. If you go too far out, the coloring is going to be off. Now I'm going to make it a little bit bigger just for time to go through this. And as you can see, I'm now cleaning this area up to look like a lot better. Now I'm going to turn it off and turn it back on. You see the difference? It looks a lot better already. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll do the same thing here. And I'm holding down the option every time I want to take a sample. And this does take a little bit of patience because you want to get it exactly how it should be. Now when you get into hair and other objects, it's going to be a little bit tricky. But I'm just holding down the option right where I want to copy, and then I'm just cloning over it where the brush would be. And now there might be some areas that look really good and then other areas that aren't so good. And so the next tool that we'll get into, and I'll show you how it works, is the healing brush. And so this is a little bit different than the clone tool. This one you can just drag. So I'm going to drag, and it needs to be the spot healing brush, not the healing brush. So I clicked and held down and moved to the spot healing, and now when I drag, it's going to sample areas around it and duplicate it, so it makes it a little cleaner. Now that's great when you've already kind of cleaned it up with the clone tool, but if I try to do it up here, it's going to have weird streaking. Same thing right here with hair. If I did that, it's going to mess it up. You can use it, but it's going to be a lot more tedious to try to clean up. See how that's kind of just blurry? Now if I did that with the clone stamp tool, and I clicked right here, and I just did little areas, now I'm sampling the hair that's right there. So it looks a lot better than using the spot healing brush, or it looks like the little band-aid tool. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up a little bit more in here. And as you can see, it's starting to look pretty good. And I'm going to go back on this side and I'll copy a little bit more. And the reason that I have it on soft is so that it looks a little softer. I'm going to go ahead and paint that in there, and that looks pretty good. I'm going to do the same here. We're going to use the rest of these tutorials to fix this picture and restore it completely. But that is how you start to use, and you can see in just a couple minutes it looks so much better already. Before I leave, let's finish up this part right here of the face. The other thing is you want to make sure that you zoom in when you're messing, and that I'm using the space bar to create the hand to move it. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this a little smaller brush, and I'm going to clone right there. And now this is a little bit of a shadow, so I'm going to click up here and I'm going to clone that way. I got our freckle right there, so I'm going to go a little higher and just spot heal. And I'm going to do the same thing right here. And you want to stick to what's similar so that when you look at it on the large scale, you're going to see, or when you zoom out, that it matches. See, that didn't match, so I'm going to undo and I'm going to get a little closer. And now that I'm a little closer, you can see I'm right close to where that's being cracked, and it's going to make a big difference when I copy it. There's a little bit more right here and some more right here. So you can see, and then this is a little, now here's where the softness comes in. This needs to be a lot softer. So I'm going to do it 4%, and I'm going to click here, and I'm going to bring it in. So now it's going a little softer. I'm going to make this just so it looks like it's a little bit more round. And then I'm going to use the spot healing brush again, make the size smaller, and I'm going to drag it over there. And I'm going to do the same here. And there's a little hard shadow right there. We'll get rid of that. And now backing up, it looks a lot better. There's still a little bit of light and dark that we'll need to clean up, but overall it's starting to look a lot better, and it's very, and you'll be able to go back and forth and to see, okay, how much light do I really need? How dark is it? I'm going to go up here a little higher and bring that down, and then I'm going to copy over into this area. And you'll just have to play with it. Like I said, some areas might be a little too dark, and you may not want to copy all of that. You may want to take an area from another section and just kind of mix it in. And all I'm doing is using the spot healing brush, and I'm just dragging, and it's softening up this hard area. Now remember not to use it too much, because it starts to blur your picture, and you don't want to get too blurry. So I'm going to use the spot healing tool here and here, and actually right there. You can see that in just a matter of a few minutes, this picture will be pretty close, at least where her scarring is. And I'll use the clone tool again, and I'll copy just a little bit more of that cheek. But now you can see that it's already starting to look a lot better. And there's still some work that we'll need to do with coloring. There's some issues right in here you can see. And one of the things I'm going to do, and we'll just test it, and this is the other thing, is you just kind of test. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'll undo that a little too much. You make a little bit bigger of a brush, it'll blend a bigger area of it. So that last one was pretty good, and I'll go right there. That was a little too much. So there we go. That is an introduction to using the spot healing brush and the clone stamp tool. We're going to continue on in the next video cleaning this picture up.